Why do police use force? The first and obvious answer is that they deal with some of the worst members of society you could think of. Just imagine the people that normal individuals would run away from. Those are the people that police have to run towards. Some of those people are often not very nice, rational or reasonable. When the police do use violence, it looks very bad and often makes the headlines, because they're in uniform and are supposed to protect us. Out of context, however, you should refrain from making a snap judgment on who was at fault there, the officers or the members of the public, until you know the circumstances better. Undoubtedly, there are and have been incidents of police using violence completely without any moral ground whatsoever. In some countries, that is still the norm. I'm speaking about Western police forces here though, which should be bound by modern laws and accountability. In general, only 2% of police-citizen encounters involve violence. Also, most violent police-citizen interaction is predicted by the citizen's demeanor, not the officers. I'm not talking about extreme incidents such as riots, mass demonstrations, terrorist incidents or football games here. I'm talking about one-on-one incidents of use of force by police officers and what the factors are that can contribute to it. Police, like any other profession, should aim to be the best they can be. In this video, we'll talk about research on 3 factors that can lead to police getting involved in violent incidents: the officer's heart rate, self-control, and carrying weapons. In general, police are called in to prevent further violence to members of the public, either by stopping it when it is still in progress, or when it appears likely to happen, or by dealing with someone who has already committed violence. However, police officers are also humans and can, by their decisions and actions, influence the extent to which they get involved in violence themselves. And this could be by agitating the person they're dealing with, or simply by how they're reacting to them. Research has found several factors that can have an influence on how likely a police officer is to become embroiled in a physically aggressive situation. One of these factors is resting heart rate, which is your pulse when you are calm and resting, for example whilst sitting down. This is regulated by your nervous system, which uses various hormones to either get the body to relax or to get it ready to respond to danger. When a threat is perceived, your heart rate jumps up to prepare your body to either fight or flee, which is why you tend to experience tension and stress throughout your body in such situations, and why it becomes less easy to concentrate on more intellectual tasks such as communication and problem solving. It can be expected that the nature of police work, which includes being involved in fast-paced and potentially high-risk and at times traumatic events, dealing with highly emotional people and very stressful and critical situations, brings with it an elevated level of heart rate. When experiencing stress, it is more difficult for anyone to make rational decisions. Also, especially male police officers are more likely to take risks when they experience more stress, and some ability to make decisions decreases. This study found that higher resting heart rate in officers was associated with an increase in making arrests for the offense of resisting arrest with violence, which means a suspect is kicking off when you are trying to arrest them. An increase by 1 beat per minute in heart rate caused a 2% increase in risk of arresting for resisting arrest with violence. That means that a modest increase in heart rate by say 10 beats per minute can make you 20% more likely to experience your suspect resisting arrest and you arresting them for that as well as the original offense. This is a huge impact on another person of something that originates in you. The lower an officer's resting heart rate is, the least likely they were to be making arrests for resisting arrest with violence in the study. Higher resting heart rate might be associated with reactive aggression, which influences how you respond to a perceived frustration, insult or provocation. If you think about you and your colleagues, have you noticed who's more likely to get into physical altercations? Is it the calm, mellow ones who communicate well, or is it those who are already on edge? Have you noticed in yourself that you are more likely to get into a physically threatening situation on some days than on others? What was different for you that day? Mindfulness and other stress reduction techniques can be great tools to not only improve officers' well-being, but also to increase their safety if you could make them less likely to get into violent situations. Can you access any of those tools, either through work or on your own time? We as humans are able to control our aggressive urges if they carry long-term negative effects. It has already been identified that low self-control is associated with police misconduct. Self-control is a daily necessity for all of us, and if we don't use enough of it, we might end up overeating, abusing alcohol and drugs, damage relationships by being aggressive and taking unnecessary sexual risks, for example. If we are using high levels of self-control regularly and over extended periods of time, research suggests that our ability to use it can become depleted or run low. Having to use self-control in one domain can then actually have a negative effect on our ability to restrain frustration and even aggression. This particular study found that officers who had been using up more self-control were aggressive much sooner in an experimental task than those who did not have to use so much energy on inhibiting their reaction. In this experiment, officers had immersed their hand in near-freezing water, and those who were instructed to keep it there as long as possible, even after they were experiencing pain, which means that this group was using self-control, were quicker to display aggression than those who were allowed to follow the urge to take the hand out as soon as it became painful. What does this mean for officers who need to use self-control to deal with their everyday policing tasks? Even standing on a cordon in very bad weather or dealing with stress-inducing individuals and being under time pressure could drain our self-regulatory abilities. Have you found that your temper was shorter when you were already trying to deal with something else and you were trying to keep your emotions and reactions in check because of that issue? Now that you are aware of this relationship, is there anything you might want to do differently? What could you do? These findings are not saying one should abandon self-control and give in to all urges and drink, eat and offend to one's heart's delight. Quite the opposite. With increased practice, tasks that initially required self-control will need less and less energy and will therefore deplete your self-control capacity less, as the mind adapts to the new conditions more. If you generally decide to live healthier, for example, decisions not to eat certain things but to eat others instead will become increasingly automatic and easy until they become second nature. Also, training under the conditions that will require self-control will make the task easier. For example, if you are standing on a cordon in the freezing cold regularly, you might find it easier the 10th time round than you did the first time. Specialist military operatives train to endure really gruesome conditions, so that will find it much more tolerable to become exposed to them out in the field. If you find it takes all your patience to deal with rowdy teenagers in a compassionate and calm manner, you might find this getting easier each time you do it, because it might require less self-control not to respond with hostility and aggression from the outset, once you've managed to suppress those urges a few times. For police dealing with difficult situations day in and day out, it means developing coping strategies that will help you in your everyday role. For example, make it second nature to be patient, understanding and genuine when dealing with hostile members of the public, and after repeated uses of this strategy, you might find it becomes easier. What other ways of inhibiting your initial inner reactions can you think of that might become easier and will benefit you in the long run? The third factor that has been found to increase the likelihood of officers getting involved in altercations is carrying weapons. It has been found that the visibility of a weapon can lead to aggression. A study conducted in London found that during the study period, tasers were only used once per 3,000 incidents to apply an electric shock to a suspect. In the UK, only specially trained officers carry tasers, and the vast majority do not. This study compared police officers who carried tasers to those who did not carry any. It was found that officers equipped with tasers were twice as likely to be assaulted and were significantly more likely to use force in response than those who did not carry them. Now that is really significant. Did the hostility come from the officer or from the suspect? To investigate this, the researchers also looked at the rates of injured suspects and complaints against police. If those officers who are taser trained tend to be more gung-ho and confrontational in and of themselves, they should be more likely to cause injuries to suspects, and we would expect more complaints against police on the grounds of unreasonable force. However, suspects were no more likely to be injured and there was no increase in complaints against police, indicating that the police was not the initiator of the violence, at least not directly. It appears that the officers wearing tasers triggered individuals they were dealing with to become more hostile just by carrying the weapons, as the suspects could see the taser on the officer. In response, the officers used more force when dealing with the suspects. The study's authors therefore suggested that tasers should be concealed rather than plainly visible. How are tasers carried in your force? Thank you for watching. I hope you found this content useful. You can get access to each episode's transcript with key learning points, timestamps and references if you get yourself onto my mailing list. Just go to the main EBP Dr website on ebpdoctor.com, and on the bottom of each page you will find a sign-up form for notifications of new content. Just enter your first name, your preferred email address and the type of organization you work for. You will not get any spam. This is just for me to let you know about new content and for you to get access to all the transcripts.